I'm so excited about today. Thank you for being so wonderful and letting us come into your sacred space and be able to share about our love for Jesus and just the different truths that he brings, and also the different way that he manifests in each individual's life. And today our guest is just the epitome of beauty and grace and creativity. She's written a book, which you'll hear in a little while was not really on her agenda, but it was on God's agenda, and she obeyed. And so that's always a fun thing to listen to. But as I was reading about her and learning about her, one of the words that just jumped out at me was the word togetherness. Mm-hmm. And she has created an environment of togetherness and a place where people can go and feel safe, and just a simplicity and beauty. And so we want to hear her story. She was a very successful career woman, the assistant DA in Virginia, and had a very reputable reputation, and yet God called her on a different path, and she said yes. I know some of you today are struggling with something, and I hope that her story will help you to say yes to the plan and purposes of God. And so without further ado, Ruth,
Hi,
it's
thank
so
you for
great
having me.
to
This
have
is so much
you.
fun. So much fun. Anytime I can shine the light on God as opposed to myself, I appreciate. So thank you for having me.
So I'm so happy you're here, and just the little things I've gotten to experience so far have been so touching and precious. I love how your book just brings out the five senses, and you know, the Holy Spirit wants to use all of them.
100%. And it didn't start out that way. I mean, I have it's a varied past. I was an assistant Commonwealth attorney for years, and then an assistant attorney general. And my husband and I moved to Philadelphia, so he could take over a family company. And our house flipping, which is what we began to do, was born more out of necessity than a desire. We didn't have the money any other way. So we began to flip houses, and we literally, for 16 years, moved every 18 months. I have five, I know. I have 5 kids, and everyone was born in a different house. And as they got older, they participated in the flipping. I have older girls who can tear out a bathroom in hours. If you hand them a sledgehammer, they'll lay hardwood floors with my husband.
I love it.
So it was a change. You know, I have found that God has really worked with me through areas of transition. And so I think more about what we're talking about today with the book was the beginning of my latest transition. So that's where.
Well, life is a series of transitions, and so here we are at this incredible one, but then everything that you went through leading up to this gave you the courage and the bravery to step into it. So 5 children.
5 kids.
Wow. How, boy, girls?
So it's 4 girls and then a boy.
Wow.
So, and they range from 21 to 13, so they're a lot of fun.
So you have a very fun, active house.
So and just to give you a little bit more history, about several years ago, we bought a 305-year-old farmhouse, and William Penn is the one who deeded it, and we're the 4th owners. But it was in complete disarray. There were trees growing into it. It's an old stone house, and it has 2 guest cottages where my dad now lives. So it's been an amazing journey, but my story, transformation, you know. So I'll kind of bring you up to speed. So a couple of years ago, I was turning 50. And my oldest daughter was going to college, and I really began to feel like the earth was shifting underneath my feet. I didn't know who I was or my identity anymore, other than being a mom. And not to belittle that, but your confidence begins to erode when you've been at home, just kind of managing that. And having gone from trial work to that, it was a drastic change. So my uncle was visiting. This was 3 years ago, and he called me into my living room, and he said, "Come sit with me for a moment." So I sit down, and he said, "I have a question for you." And I said, "What's that, Uncle Hubert?" And he said, "What are you 100% depending on the Lord for right now?"
Wow.
And I said, "Besides raising my 5 kids?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Nothing." And I mean, I'd gone through the death of my mom. Obviously, in the course of flipping houses, we were depending on him, but not to the degree he was talking about. And he said, "I have a challenge for you. I challenge you to ask the Lord to give you a vision beyond your resources, beyond your financial means, your personal capital, or your education." Because he knew that we had managed to do a great deal by pushing through, right?
Yeah.
Doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to see God do all the work and get all the glory.
Yeah.
So I began to pray that every single day. And a couple of months later, I went to a conference up in Connecticut done by Women Doing Well, where they're helping women find their purpose, plan, and passion. And I was sitting there watching a friend, Sally Lloyd-Jones, who wrote the Storybook Bible, was there, a number of these different women who have been really successful in their different areas. And one of the women on the panel said, because these were all CEOs who were leaving their areas of business to go into ministry.
Wow.
And she said, I can do a spreadsheet in my sleep, but I don't know how to do a cheese board. And, so I get in my car and I'm driving home and I'm just in tears because I don't even know what I'm passionate about anymore, except family. And I said to my best friend who was driving with me, I said, all I know is I'm passionate about my family and blessing others through and in our home. But what would God ever do with that? Again, belittling what God has done. And we grew up, my dad grew up in an evangelist family. They grew up all over the world. Corrie ten Boom would come through, my grandparents' house. So I knew how formative the home is. Wow. So anyways, fast forward another month, and I'm continuing to pray that prayer. And I go to another conference, Women of Legacy conference down in D.C., and I met a woman there, and she said to me, "You're my divine appointment." A couple of months later, I had hosted a large wedding at my house, and I was laying on the floor with a migraine, and she texted, "I'd like you to come to London and pray over my house."
Wow.
And I said, "No." And again, I'm praying, not knowing what it was God was going to do. And she ended up saying, "I'm going to help you get over here tomorrow." Okay, I said, I'll come in 2 days, okay? And Sally came as well. So I'm over in London. Sarah says, "I'd like to take you all to a farm nearby for lunch." So we go to this farm. And she says to me, what made you flip houses? And I made the statement, everyone's hungry for home. So they both pick up their computers. Sarah says to Sally, "It has never been taken." And I said, "What hasn't been taken?" And they said, "You're supposed to write a book." And I said, "I will never write a book, ever." I mean, when we have family reunions, we have book tables because so many people have written books or have been written about them. And I make fun of all those people. So anyways, I come home. They kept bothering me. "You're going to write a book. You're going to write a book." And I tell my sister. She starts to cry. And she said, "You're supposed to write this book."
Aww.
I said, "I'm not writing a book. I have nothing to say. And I'm not capable." So she said, "Call my friend who's an author out in California and just talk to her." The author says, "I'd like to fly out there this week." I know. I mean, who does that, right?
Your whole life is very quick.
It is very, but remember, I'm praying now. This is like 6 months.
Yes, you're right.
This author flies to my house, and she says, "This is bigger than you. I'd like to co-labor with you on a book." I said, "I'm not writing a book." I don't know how many times I need to say this. So this is the part of the story where you're going to see the obedience fall in. My sister and she went shopping the day she was leaving. She walks into my living room. I'm sitting on the same couch I had been with Uncle Hubert. And she hands me 2 wrapped gifts. And the first one was a teapot. And she says, "Whenever you're wanting to read the word and pray and meditate on what the Lord has for you, have some tea." Oh. And I giggled to myself because I don't drink tea and I'm not writing a book. I'm going to say that again. So she says, she hands me the second gift and it's wrapped. And she said, "Before you open it, I looked all over town. If you were to do a book, what would it look like?" I opened this up. I opened the beginning of it and I said, "Where is this?" And she's like, "I have no idea. It's the farm Sarah took me to in the Cotswolds outside of London." Oh, wow. In the entire world. And I could cry talking about it. God is going to get my attention. I'm sitting here asking him repeatedly, right? So I sat there and just wept and I said, "I'll be obedient." So the author put an app on my phone, and every Monday for 6 months would send questions. And I would talk into my phone and it would go to her and she'd transcribe it and then we'd work together. So I don't get any glory for this book. I was obedient, and what we did was, my heart is for the home and the fractured home in our country. We don't just have a fractured society, but our homes are. And the desire for home crosses every economic background, ethnic background. I mean, everybody wants a home. So that's my heart. And what creates home, to me, it isn't just the 4 walls. I had done a lot of flipping. I have friends who, have beautiful designers do their house. But what's home is the family culture.
Yeah.
And if you're not intentional about creating that culture, it's going to happen whether you intend it or not.
Okay.
So be intentional. So we took our farm over the course of a year with family recipes, family traditions, gardening, and entertaining. And that's what the book is.